The legal loophole. Why the US became OPEC of Plasma. To see who wrote the Tuesdays and Fridays into law, we have to step into the rulebook. Most wealthy countries draw a bright line. You can't pay for blood components. The United States draws a curved one. You can pay for plasma, not whole blood plasma. That carve-out is the hinge. Because of it, the United States now supplies roughly 70% of the world's plasma, exporting finished products that in 2023 brought in around $37 billion, more than coal and gold. How did the line bend there? Safety language opened the door. Regulators separated whole blood donation from source plasma collected by apheresis. Industry leaned hard into the difference. You aren't selling plasma, you're a donor receiving compensation. Those words slip past bans aimed at preserving altruism in blood. Abroad, hospitals still pitch unpaid whole blood drives. Plasma arrives as a pharmaceutical input bought from US firms. Clean labels, batch records, invoices. The Food and Drug Administration then set the metronome. Up to 2 plasma donations per week with required intervals, screening every visit, infectious disease testing, minimum total protein and hemoglobin thresholds. On paper, that's about recipient safety and donor eligibility. In practice, it's an operations manual. If you tell a system how often its donors can produce and exactly when they're eligible again, apps will ping at the minute mark and chairs will fill on schedule. While that cadence settled in, global policy hardened around it. Many European countries restrict or discourage payment for plasma collection. Canada wrestled province by province, paid in some places, banned in others. Asia imports heavily. This patchwork created a quiet dependency. Ministers could defend unpaid domestic blood while signing multi-year tenders for plasma-derived therapies sourced from paid Americans. Ethics stayed local, product went global. When you hear supply security in procurement, this is the subtext. Borders turned into supply valves. Centers within reach of Mexico, and in some cases, Canada saw cross-border donors build routines around visas, day labor, and bus timetables. The system didn't need to ask about immigration status. It needed government-issued identification, clean screens, and compliance with frequency caps. When pandemic travel paused those routes, collections dipped. Months later, hospitals rationed IVIG. A stress test wrote a note in the margins. Reliability rested on people with the least slack. Industry helped draft the margins. Trade groups wrote best practice papers that read like dry regulation. Executives cycled through advisory committees and back to boardrooms. Lobby disclosures tallied millions to defend compensation for plasma and to tout safety improvements, nucleic acid testing, solvent detergent inactivation, quarantines that did, in fairness, transform recipient safety. The revolving door didn't have to be sinister to be effective. It just had to be consistent. Trade law smoothed the conveyor. Agreements harmonized biologic standards, sped customs, and discouraged sudden barriers on plasma-derived products. A vial processed in Texas could reach a clinic in Germany with less friction than a crate of fruit. Patients benefited from predictability. So did companies, buffered from local political flare-ups by global contracts and redundant routes. If one country blinked, product detoured. Listen to hearings and you'll hear the same phrases. Community donors, compensation offsets time and travel, critical, irreplaceable therapies. None of that is false. It's selective. It centers recipient safety and glides past labor conditions that make 2-a-week collection reliable. The Food and Drug Administration doesn't set wages. Labor agencies don't recognize high-frequency donors as workers. Health departments, focused on recipients, don't compile long-term donor protein and ferritin data across firms. Safety gets regulated where regulators have jurisdiction. Everything else becomes assumption. State houses filled in the zoning. Classify centers as medical offices and clustering slides through areas hungry for tenants. If residents push back, moratoria appear, temporary, porous, and often shifting demand to a nearby town. Meanwhile, siting lands along bus lines and in retail corridors where a storefront can pass as a clinic. It's legal design doing logistical work. There's a paradox stitched into the statutes. The safer manufacturing got multiple virus inactivation steps, lot holds, nucleic acid tests, the easier it was for lawmakers to defend compensation. Recipient risk dropped, so the ethics debate upstream went quiet. But recipient safety doesn't answer the labor question. Who bears the biological cost of meeting policy-permitted frequency over months and years? In a system that doesn't classify donors as workers, that answer never gets codified. It gets lived. Micro story, a border town manager watches collections sag when a bus route changes. She extends hours, raises referral bonuses, and gets a nod from corporate to add Sunday chairs. Volumes inch back. Months later, a hospital 2 states away sees allocations stabilize. The regulation that mattered most wasn't a statute. It was a timetabled loop that poor commuter could make. This is how the United States became the OPEC of Plasma, not by decree, but by a stack of choices. A legal carve-out defining compensation as compatible with donation, federal rules that set an extractable rhythm, trade architecture that rewarded throughput, and international policies that kept demand high while pushing ethical friction offshore. It's stable until life at the margins isn't. And when the margins move, the world's IG budget moves with them. We built the pipeline with statutes and semantics. To test its strength, we have to step back out of the hearing room and into the recliners. The pamphlets say it's safe. The logs say adverse events are rare.
Safety.
The bodies that keep the metronome
reality.
tell a longer pamphlet hits the right notes. Modern tests, strict screening, rare adverse events. And for recipients, that's true. Nucleic acid testing, solvent detergent steps, heat treatments, those layers drove viral transmission risk down to the floor. But donor safety runs on a different ledger. It's not one bad outcome in a chair. It's a slow drift you only see if you follow the same person through months of Tuesdays and Fridays. Start with what people feel before any number drops. Lightheaded when they stand, headaches that track with donation days, bruises that map a forearm because a needle slipped or a vein blew under time pressure, a cough that lingers because sleep is thin. Centers build faint rooms for a reason, fans, juice, cots behind a curtain. Most incidents resolve in minutes and get logged as minor. That's the acute picture. The chronic picture lives in protein. Source plasma isn't red cells, so iron loss looks small. But the machine still pulls proteins, albumin, immunoglobulins, and fluid volume your body has to replace. If you're well rested and well fed, you bounce. If you're stitching bonuses into a rent calendar, you live on the edge of deferral. Longitudinal studies of frequent donors show what staff see anecdotally. Total protein and ferritin trend down in high-frequency cohorts. Many recover with rest and diet. But recovery needs time and food that scarcity taxes. Rules try to guard the rails. The Food and Drug Administration caps frequency at twice a week with set intervals. Each visit checks vitals, screens for infections, and requires minimums for total protein and hemoglobin. On paper, it looks like a net. In a busy center, it feels like a timer. Quotas ride on completes, not on quietly sending someone home to sleep. A borderline protein, water, salt recheck, dizzy mid-cycle, feet up, fan on, finish if stable. None of this is villainy. It's throughput logic in a place that buys biology. Here's a gap you can't see on a poster. Companies report serious adverse events to regulators. What's thin is shared long-term data that follows frequent donors across centers and years. If someone rides new donor bonuses from one franchise to another, no single system holds their protein and ferritin arc. Without a linked, public dataset, safety is audited in snapshots, not in films. The industry says adverse events are rare. That can be accurate for acute reactions and still miss cumulative depletion in people who don't have slack. Micro story, a single parent in a food desert times plasma to daycare hours and a warehouse shift. On Friday, her total protein dips below cutoff. Deferred, she's told to rest and eat more protein. The pantry says pasta and peanut butter. Tuesday, she squeaks past threshold and completes. This repeats for weeks. Nothing catastrophic happens in one draw. The harm, if it comes, arrives as fatigue, missed work, or easier infections over a season. Add the needlework, staff turnover, training helps but speed erodes finesse. Blown sticks, infiltrations, hematomas, you feel those days later lifting a box or buckling a child. They're logged as minor. Stack them for a year and you start favoring one arm than the other. Some donors learn to refuse a novice phlebotomist by name because the wrong hand makes the next week harder. There's an immunity question donors whisper about that science hasn't closed for high-frequency, low-resource groups. Does removing IG twice a week for months make you more likely to catch what's going around? Many people reconstitute fast, others lag. Studies suggest immunoglobulin dips recover with time, but time costs money in this system. Without transparent, pooled data on frequent donors' infections, the debate stays stuck between reassurance and rumor. The industry's defense is familiar. Strict screening, tight thresholds, rare serious events, all true and incomplete. Because the risk the model externalizes isn't a spike on a chart, it's the physiological cost of keeping a predictable rhythm when life isn't predictable. When a donor misses a visit, a budget stumbles. When a budget stumbles, rest vanishes. When rest vanishes, borderline metrics become normal. Safety becomes a moving target. A person chases with salt packets and generic iron. Micro story, a home health aide donates Wednesday mornings, then lifts clients all afternoon. By November, stairs feel steeper on donation days. She starts shifting heavier tasks to Thursdays, but holidays blow up schedules and she pushes through. January brings a cold she can't shake. The center defers her once, then twice. She loses the streak bonus and buys cough syrup with grocery money. Nothing here makes a headline. Everything here explains why the metronome stays reliable until it doesn't. Recipient safety got engineered into redundancy. Donor safety got eligibility rules and trust that people would self-regulate. Most do until rent is due. The system counts on that discipline, then calls it generosity. To see the cost of that bargain at scale, you have to leave the chair and sit with the people who buy what those proteins become and what happens when the pipeline tightens. The donor economy. Survival on 880 milliliters. Step outside the pamphlet and into a kitchen where the month starts crooked. The rent cleared, but the car insurance drafted early and the fridge is condiments and wilted lettuce. The center's app pings, complete both visits this week, earn an extra 20. That's gas and 2 dinners. The calendar clicks into place. Tuesday becomes plasma, Wednesday the long shift, Friday plasma again, Saturday laundry and groceries. It's not a windfall. It's a bridge that always seems to end just before solid ground. The rhythm is precise because the costs are 2 hours in a chair, plus transit, plus the sitter you text from the waiting room. $45 loads by evening, $60 if you hit the streak. Miss Tuesday and the ladder resets. Miss Friday and the pantry feels it on Sunday. The center knows your intervals to the minute and nudges you when you clear them. You answer because the meter on your life runs in small denominators. Quarters at the laundromat, $5 for cough syrup, a late fee that blooms if you're a day slow. Micro story, a single dad with a 7-year-old times plasma to school pickup. He books the 1:15 slot, grabs the chair by the outlet and flips flashcards for a certification exam while the machine hums. The card loads by 6. He buys chicken thighs and rice, then reviews dosage calculations after bedtime. When overtime hits at the warehouse, he slides plasma to Sunday morning. The sitter charges more on weekends. The streak bonus covers the sitter. The balance holds barely. Micro story, a barista with unpredictable shifts lines up after a lunch rush. She learned the hacks the hard way: salt water before the recheck, eggs and beans the night before, oatmeal after. Cheap iron tablets keep ferritin from dipping below cutoff. She shares tips in whispers. Who has the lightest hand, which hour moves fastest, when the center quietly expands hours to chase volume. The tricks aren't about thriving. They're about not losing a week to a deferral slip that reads like a bounced check. Gig work braided with plasma has its own math. Tuesday plasma pays for gas to chase Wednesday night rides. Friday plasma funds the Sunday grocery run, so Monday's paycheck can kill a late fee before it metastasizes into a shutoff. Referral bonuses turn donors into recruiters. Bring a friend, both get 25. You end up coaching someone through their first intake because 2 households are trying to stretch a coupon that calls itself appreciation. There's a quiet ledger the app never shows. Fatigue taxes everything. A courier who donates Friday afternoon takes highway ramps a shade slower at midnight. A home health aide who lifts clients after 2 draws a week catches colds easier and shakes them slower. None of this triggers an incident form. It shows up as a week that runs heavier than it should, as a second cup of coffee on Thursday you didn't need last spring. Stigma rides shotgun. Some donors don't tell coworkers, worried a manager will think they can't handle heavy days. College kids keep it from parents who mail small transfers with big expectations. A grandmother tells her church she's volunteering at a medical center. It's not exactly a lie. It's an edit that makes the exchange livable in a world that calls hustles noble until the hustle is your body. The mural inside helps. Heroes sit here. Thank you for saving lives. That language does real work for morale. It also papers over the labor. When a friend jokes about selling blood, you correct them you're donating. The word smooths the edge. It lets you believe 2 things at once. You're helping someone you'll never meet, and you're holding your week together. Both are true. Only one loads on a prepaid card. Micro story, a nursing assistant finishing her LPN studies turns the chair into a study hall. She prints flashcards, tucks them into a tote, and mutes patient education videos about IVIG while the machine ticks. She promises herself she'll quit after boards. She passes. 2 months later, rent spikes and the car needs brakes. The app pings fall frenzy bonus. She hesitates, then books Tuesday. Graduation didn't erase the math. It just changed the story she tells about how long she'll keep playing it. The numbers upstream stay abstract: yield optimization, capacity utilization, allocation emails. In the donor economy, numbers are immediate: 12 bus stops, 9 minutes late, $45 by 6. The $500 to $1,000 downstream value per liter never appears in this spreadsheet. What appears is a referral ladder, a hoodie giveaway, a grocery raffle. If the market valued the raw material like the finished gram, this budget would look different. It doesn't. So biology gets scheduled. This isn't failure of character. It's policy expressed as routine. When wages stall, when daycare costs bite, when sick leave is theory, plasma becomes the only place in town where time turns into cash by nightfall, and a thank you makes it feel less like work. People learn the metronome because the metronome learns them. And as long as the pipeline measures success in steady liters, the donor economy will keep time, 1/880 milliliter bridge at a time. The buyers, club, big pharma's dependency. Unknown to the people timing salt packets and bus routes, their Tuesdays and Fridays feed 4 names that show up on earnings tickers. CSL, Grifols, Tainted, Octapharma. They learn the same lesson early: scale is safety, and in plasma, scale is profit. They don't run corner clinics for charity. They run networks the way airlines run hubs: synchronized routes, forecasted capacities, hedges for delays, and a control tower that speaks in liters, yields, and release rate. Walk a plant floor and the stakes click into place. Stainless towers rise like silent cathedrals. Pools hold tens of thousands of liters while engineers ride the variables: cold ethanol steps, solvent detergent baths, heat holds, chromatography resins swapped on schedules tighter than flight plans. A decimal moved in the right direction, a fraction of a gram more Ig per liter, pays for a new line and shows up on the next call as process intensification. Meanwhile, albumin stays the workhorse commodity, but IVIG is the engine, the reason every tweak to yield gets a slide. Contracts lock in the tempo. Distributors and hospital systems sign multi-year agreements that set floors on volume and clauses for shortages. When inputs thin, prices rise. When batch releases lag, allocation emails land like weather alerts. The economics are blunt. The United States supplies about 70% of global plasma, and finished blood-derived products exported from here brought in roughly $37 billion in 2023, more than coal and gold. That figure glows in investor decks because it says the thing plainly: plasma isn't a side hustle, it's a pillar. Dependency sounds abstract until you sit in clinic chairs. A teenager with primary immunodeficiency wraps a blanket around her legs for a monthly infusion. A dad with CIDP times IVIG so he can button his shirt without shaking.